Welcome to New Era School Notes for Studies.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we're digging into a moment, just one day really, that completely altered the course of the 20th century. Picture this. It's a Sunday morning, June 28th, 1914, in Sarajevo. Seems ordinary, right?
Until it wasn't. What happened that day wasn't just some local incident. It was literally the spark that lit the fuse for World War I.
Exactly. And that's our mission for this deep dive, to really get into that specific event, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
We want to go beyond just the what happened. We'll explore, who Franz Ferdinand really was, the motivations of his assassin, which are often simplified, and how this one act could possibly trigger a global war.
Yeah, how does that even happen? So by the end of this, you'll have a solid grasp of this pivotal moment, maybe with a few surprising details you didn't know.
And we're grounding this discussion in detailed accounts, primarily drawing from Wikipedia's entries on Archduke Franz Ferdinand in World War I, so a good, solid base of information.
Okay, let's dive in. Part 1. The Archduke and his world.
Right. To understand the assassination, you first need to understand Franz Ferdinand himself.
He was the heir presumptive to the Austro-Hungarian throne.
Yes, but his path there was kind of accidental. He wasn't born the direct heir.
Yeah.
He only became heir after his cousin, Crown Prince Rudolf, died tragically in 1889, the Mayerling incident, and then his own father passed away in 1896. So it fell to him.
Okay, so a bit of a reluctant heir, perhaps, but he clearly gained influence.
Oh, definitely, especially in the military. By 1913, he was made Inspector General of the entire Austro-Hungarian armed forces. Significant power.
And he had quite the hobby, didn't he?
Huh. You can say that. Our sources mention this intense passion for trophy hunting.
Intense seems like an understatement.
Well, his diaries apparently list 272,511 game kills.
Wow.
And his castle in Bohemia, Konopište, supposedly housed around 100,000 trophies. It's just a staggering number.
Hard to even picture. But his personal life had other, maybe more relatable, dramatic elements, his marriage, for instance.
Ah, yes. The marriage to Countess Sophie Chodek. That's a key part of his story.
It was a morganatic marriage, which sounds quite formal. What did that actually mean for them?
It basically meant it was a marriage between people of unequal rank, and crucially, their children couldn't inherit the throne.
Why?
Because Sophie was only a countess, a lady-in-waiting, not from a reigning or formerly reigning dynasty. Franz Ferdinand was deeply in love, refused to marry anyone else. The emperor, Franz Joseph, only agreed in 1900 under that strict condition: no succession rights for their kids.
That must have been tough. And Sophie faced social issues because of it.
Constantly. She couldn't share her husband's rank, title, or privileges. She couldn't sit with him in the royal box at official events, things like that. Little constant reminders of her lower status, despite being the wife of the heir.
That sets up a really interesting dynamic, and it leads us to something quite paradoxical about Franz Ferdinand himself, doesn't it? His political views.
Yes, this is where it gets really fascinating, and frankly quite ironic given what happened.
Because you'd expect the heir to a vast multi-ethnic empire like Austria-Hungary to be, well, rigidly conservative, maybe even oppressive.
That's the common image. But Franz Ferdinand actually held some views that were, for his time and position, surprisingly, progressive, maybe reformist is a better word.
How so?
He saw the growing unrest among the different ethnic groups, especially the Slavs, Czechs, Croats, Bosnians, who felt marginalized by the Austro-Hungarian system, which heavily favored Austrians and Hungarians.
It's 1867 compromise effect.
Exactly. And Franz Ferdinand believed the answer wasn't more suppression, but actually granting greater autonomy to these groups.
Really? He wanted to give them more power.
Within the empire, yes. His idea was to restructure things, maybe create a kind of federal system, diminishing the dominance of the Hungarians, the Magyars, over the Slavic and Romanian populations. He wanted a strong central government, but with, and this is quoted, far-reaching administrative autonomy to all the nationalities of the monarchy.
That sounds radically different from the status quo.
It was. He even wrote in a letter in 1913 something like, irredentism, the desire for ethnic groups to break away or join other nations, will cease immediately if our Slavs are given a comfortable, fair, and good life, instead of being, quote, trampled on by the Hungarians.
So he saw fair treatment as the key to holding the empire together.
Pretty much. And this extended to Serbia, too. He was actually quite cautious about conflict with Serbia.
Which is, again, ironic, given that Serbian nationalism was the driving force behind his assassination.
Deeply ironic. He warned that cracking down too hard on Serbia would inevitably lead to war with Russia, which he thought would destroy both empires. He often clashed with the army chief, Konrad von Hötzendorf, who was much more hawkish.
So let's just pause on that. The man who was assassinated by Serbian nationalists aiming to free South Slavs?
Was perhaps one of the few figures in the Habsburg leadership who actually envisioned a path, however flawed, towards greater rights and autonomy for those same South Slavs within the empire.
The mind boggles, and it seems even the emperor wasn't exactly his biggest fan.
No. Emperor Franz Joseph apparently found his nephew difficult and his ideas potentially destabilizing. There's that reported quote after the assassination, "For me, it is a relief from a great worry."
Wow, that speaks volumes about the internal tensions.
It really does. The whole situation was incredibly complex, far more than just empire versus nationalists.
Okay, so that's the man and his complicated context. Now, let's go to Sarajevo, June 28th, 1914.
The fateful day. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie were visiting Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Which Austria-Hungary had annexed just a few years earlier in 1908.
Yes, a very controversial move that had seriously inflamed Serbian nationalist sentiment. They saw Bosnia as rightfully theirs, or at least not Austria's.
And the visit itself, it didn't go smoothly from the start. There was an earlier attempt on their lives that day.
That's right. Before they even reached the town hall, one of the conspirators, a young man named Nedeljko Abramovich, threw a grenade at their car.
Did it hit them?
No, it bounced off the Archduke's car and exploded under the next vehicle in the motorcade, injuring several people.
Incredible. What was Franz Ferdinand's reaction?
Apparently, when he finally arrived at the governor's residence, he was furious and reportedly snapped, "So you welcome your guests with bombs."
Can't blame him, but they decided to carry on.
After the reception, they actually decided they wanted to visit the people injured by the bomb in the hospital. A noble gesture, perhaps.
But it led to the fatal error.
It did. The plan changed, but crucially, it seems, no one clearly informed the drivers of the new route.
Oh, no.
So the driver of Franz Ferdinand's car took a wrong turn, following the original itinerary. When they realized the mistake, the car had to stop.
Right on the spot where another assassin was waiting.
Exactly. By sheer tragic coincidence, they stopped right in front of where 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip was standing, probably after hearing about the failed bomb attempt.
He just happened to be there.
He was part of the same group, Young Bosnia. He saw his chance, stepped forward, and fired 2 shots from his pistol at point-blank range.
Into the open car.
Into the open car. One bullet hit Sophie in the abdomen. The other hit Franz Ferdinand in the neck.
And the accounts of those final moments are just heartbreaking.
They really are. Our sources describe him leaning over his dying wife, pleading.
Sophie, sterbe nicht. Bleibe am Leben für unsere Kinder.
Sophie, dear, don't die. Stay alive for our children. Just devastating.
And he kept saying, it is nothing, even as he was clearly dying.
Yes, es ist nichts. And there's that detail about his uniform jacket.
Ah, yes, being sewn shut.
His aide tried to open his tunic to see the wound, but the outer lapel had been stitched to the inner front, apparently for a smoother look in public. They couldn't get it open quickly.
So they couldn't even administer first aid properly?
Not immediately. He died very quickly, within minutes. Sophie died shortly after as well, before they even reached the hospital properly. That little detail about the uniform. A strange, sad footnote.
It really is. Okay, so let's talk about the assassin, Gavrilo Princip. Who was he, and what was young Bosnia?
Princip was a Bosnian Serb, very young, only 19. He was part of this revolutionary movement called Young Bosnia.
What were they fighting for?
Their goal was the liberation of South Slavs, Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, Bosniaks from Austro-Hungarian rule. They wanted unification, likely in a state dominated by or joined with Serbia. It was a nationalist movement.
And they weren't acting entirely alone. There's the Black Hand connection.
Right, that's crucial. Princip and the others were armed and likely supported by extremists within a secret Serbian military society called the Black Hand.
Led by quite a high-ranking figure.
Yes, Lieutenant Colonel Drogutin Dimitrijevic, also known as Apis. He was head of Serbian military intelligence, so there was definitely a Serbian connection, though the extent of official government knowledge is still debated by historians.
But the core motivation for Princip and Young Bosnia was clear.
Absolutely. As our sources state, they hoped his death would free Bosnia from Austrian rule. It was a political act aimed at dismantling the empire's hold on the region.
And all this is happening in the powder keg of Europe, as the Balkans were known.
Precisely. Tensions had been building for years. That 1908 annexation of Bosnia was a huge flashpoint.
It really angered the Serbs.
Deeply. And the aftermath of the assassination itself just poured fuel on the fire. Austro-Hungarian authorities basically let loose or even encouraged anti-Serb riots in Sarajevo and elsewhere.
Retaliation.
Yes, carried out by mobs and also by a militia, the Schutzkorps, mostly made up of Bosniaks. Thousands of Serbs were arrested, many killed. It just shows how deep those ethnic and political fault lines were.
Okay, so the assassination happens. The immediate local reaction is violent.
Yeah.
How does this escalate beyond Bosnia? This is the July crisis.
Right. The assassination triggers a month of frantic diplomacy, or perhaps failed diplomacy. Austria-Hungary is determined to use this as an excuse to crush Serbia.
They believe Serbia was behind it.
Officials certainly acted like they did. They suspected Serbian intelligence involvement, even if, as their own foreign ministry admitted, they didn't have solid proof. They saw it as a golden opportunity to solve their Serbian problem once and for all. War seemed like the best option to them.
Which leads to the infamous ultimatum.
Delivered on July 23rd. 10 demands.
Yeah.
And our sources are clear. They were made intentionally unacceptable.
Designed to be rejected, to give Austria the excuse it wanted.
Exactly. And Serbia, remarkably, accepted almost all of them. All except 2 points that would have basically allowed Austrian officials to operate inside Serbia, violating their sovereignty.
And Austria said, nope, not good enough.
That was their stance. Partial rejection was treated as total rejection. And so, on July 28th, 1914, exactly 1 month after the assassination,
War.
Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, started shelling Belgrade almost immediately.
And then the dominoes fall, the alliance systems kick in.
It happened incredibly fast. Russia felt it had to back Serbia, its Slavic ally. So Russia mobilizes.
Which brings in Germany.
Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, sees Russian mobilization as a threat, declares war on Russia, then declares war on Russia's ally, France.
And Britain.
Britain hesitated initially, but when Germany invaded neutral Belgium to get to France quickly, the Schlieffen Plan, that was the tipping point, Britain declared war on Germany.
Then the Ottoman Empire joins the Central Powers later.
And suddenly, this assassination in Sarajevo has engulfed almost all of Europe and eventually much of the world in war.
It's still kind of staggering. How could an event that, according to one historian, initially almost failed to make any impression whatsoever in Vienna itself?
Where people were apparently listening to music and drinking wine.
How could that escalate so quickly? You mentioned historian Christopher Clark's idea.
Yes, he compared it to a kind of 9/11 effect, a terrorist act, but one that became instantly charged with immense historical significance, completely changing the political chemistry in Vienna and other capitals. It provided the trigger that many factions, for various reasons, were almost waiting for.
So pulling it all together, why does this deep dive matter for you, our listener?
Well, I think it shows how a single event, the assassination, acted as that perfectly timed spark on a continent just overloaded with flammable material.
All those things we mentioned. The alliances, the arms race, imperial rivalries, nationalism.
Especially in the Balkans.
Yeah.
And you have the tragic irony of Franz Ferdinand himself, his somewhat progressive views on autonomy for the Slavs.
Contrasted with Princeps Act, driven by that very desire for liberation from Austrian rule.
It highlights the massive misunderstandings, the miscalculations, the sheer momentum that pushed Europe towards catastrophe. It shows how individual actions, shaped by bigger forces, can have unimaginably huge consequences.
It's a potent reminder, isn't it? How interconnected history is and how quickly things can spiral out of control when the conditions are, well, ripe for conflict.
Absolutely. Local issues become global crises before anyone fully grasps what's happening.
So, as we finish up, here's something to think about. That cascade of small chances. If Princip hadn't been right there when the car stalled, if the driver hadn't taken a wrong turn, if Franz Ferdinand's coat wasn't sewn shut, or even if Serbia had somehow accepted every single demand in the ultimatum, would the Great War have been avoided altogether? Or was it inevitable, and this was just the trigger that happened to set it off? Would something else have done it weeks, months, or years later?
That question of historical inevitability versus contingency, it's fascinating. What does it tell us about how history really unfolds?
Something to ponder. That's all for this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. We are also on Facebook and TikTok. Just scan the QR. This is Victoria signing out. Peace.